You're listening to The Route, a sports talk podcast. On Facebook.com/TheRoute2 and on Twitter @the_Route2.
All right, welcome into a special edition of The Route. And I guess kind of a maybe a preview of what we could be airing on Delay of Game that will be returning for 2016, and I am very excited to have that happen. We announced that on our podcast yesterday. But today, a very special, I guess, debate between two of the best debaters that I could possibly work with, or at least I used to work with him. Doug Lowery, who is a reporter in Northeast Nebraska. He joins us via the phone, and of course, my former co-host of Delay of Game, Jon Kipper, is also here. These two had a very special connection, Doug and Kipper did, because they did a show together, and it was probably some of the more entertaining radio that you could possibly find in really all of Lincoln in the years that these two worked together. Probably even better than Delay of Game itself, honestly, but I do digress on that. Gentlemen, good to have you both here. Kipper, as always, you know, you're just like a few blocks away, and you're here.
I came very fast, Ryan.
I'm
everywhere.
Right after the Packers game, too.
I was very efficient.
Yes. And Doug Lowery, you joined us via the phone, and you're, I'm guessing it's kind of snowy where you are right now, correct?
Yep, that was my job Friday. I was the Jim Cantori of the folks I work for up here. I literally drove into the snow, into like a foot of snowbanks at times. Like, it was just, I made it all the way up to Ponca, Nebraska. I was reporting from downtown Ponca at one point, where there was about a foot of snow on the ground. It was a good time.
Didn't it make you wish, though, that you were actually really in Chicago reporting on the north side about the snow? Because they had it there, too, you know.
About the thunder snow? Yeah, that was Jim Cantori in Chicago a couple years ago.
Oh, I was just talking about over the weekend.
No, I enjoyed where I was, and you know, the roads were largely empty. I'm sure in Chicago I would have had to deal with some knuckleheads trying to drive through it.
Probably.
Of course.
Probably.
Oh, so anyways, the purpose of this podcast, as I said earlier, to basically have these two fine gentlemen debate it out as only these two fine gentlemen can possibly do. We've got a great list of questions here, and without further adu, let us gentlemen jump into them. And we'll start off with kind of maybe an easy one, kind of a lighter one, not so, I guess, filled with you know, intense discussion about certain things that go on in sports. And the first question we will begin with is, and I'll start with you, Jon Kipper, if you had one college basketball team to be a fan of for the rest of your life, which team would it be and why?
Okay, so...
Not Nebraska, right?
Yeah, so you
Correct.
can't say Nebraska.
Exactly.
I don't know why that would be your choice, like if you just had to randomly pick. Okay, so when you think about here, like, you want a team that's obviously good. So you want a team that has a pedigree of success that's not going to be in and out just based off coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And you want a team that's somewhat likable. Maybe do you want to go to a team that you want to visit? Maybe? I don't know. I'm just trying to ponder in my head what exactly.
Do you want me to answer mine so you can think some more?
Yeah, I'm still thinking.
Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
So obviously, you know, I have a connection to this school, so I would choose Villanova. My little brother went there, but I would also choose there. I like their program. They're a pretty clean-run program. Usually good kids because they have to be academically eligible to go to a school like Villanova. And Jay Wright just has swag as a head coach. I mean, that dude rocks a three-piece suit like no one's business. They're eligible every year for the tournament. They're always there. They're always successful. So, I mean, it checks off a lot on the criteria list. But it's also not a team that, you know, you catch a lot of Tar Heel fans and Duke fans. I mean, it's not one of, you know, it's not North Carolina. It's not Duke. It's not Kansas. I guess if I had to have a second choice, it might be Michigan State because I like Izzo. He's about to be done there. So, I mean, Villanova is my choice for sure, but I do respect the heck out of the Spartans.
I'm going to go UCLA. That's a team that has a pedigree. They're a team like Doug did ring something that was true. I think you see a lot of Duke fans, a lot of North Carolina, a lot of Kansas fans all over the place. You don't see a ton of UCLA fans, so I think that'd be kind of a nice little area. It's not really a team that you have much connection to one way or the other, so you kind of attach yourself to them pretty easily. West Coast, like I said, that'd be cool to visit sometime. You'd have a connection there. But liking college basketball teams is weird because for a long time I liked North Carolina on par with Nebraska, and I kind of just fell off at some point. At some point I'm just like, I just got to pick one team, and it was obviously Nebraska. So it is hard to do, but yes, I think I would choose UCLA, but it's close. Like I thought about saying North Carolina still, but like you said, you see a lot of them, and I don't know.
I think tradition,
Right.
tradition-rich programs, I think, is something that would be good for fans to choose. Like, as you said, UCLA, Villanova's kind of tradition-rich as well. Quite a few current Big East teams. Michigan State, Michigan, I guess a little bit. Ohio State, a little bit. I really can't think of very many other tradition-rich college basketball programs outside of your Kansas or your North Carolina or your Duke, your Indiana. That would be another good one, I think. Yeah, Syracuse. There we go. Louisville, maybe. So there's a good amount of them out there. But as far as, I guess, tradition-rich is what I was really going for. And that's interesting. Two really good answers from you two guys. Switching drastically here, I guess, we go from college basketball to the NFL. And the next question is, which Hall of Fame NFL quarterback would you want to have on your team?
I want to clarify this question a little bit. So it could be anybody ever.
Correct. You would think I guess, any Hall of Fame NFL quarterback.
They have to be in the Hall of Fame, or if they're headed that way, for sure.
I'd say make them be in Hall of Fame.
I
make
would
sure
agree.
It's all passed.
I'd agree, Kipper. Probably with the first part. Probably in the Hall of Fame right now.
Brett Favre, man. I was going to choose Favre. So
I knew you were. That's why I didn't want that answer. I want you to think more. I can go first. I know mine.
Go ahead.
I'm going to say Dan Marino. This is a guy that had one of the best arms ever in NFL. Kind of set the bar. Like, he was doing stuff that quarterbacks do nowadays in terms of throwing for 300 yards, throwing for 4 touchdowns, very, very regularly in a day and age where quarterbacks threw for 173 yards and a touchdown and maybe 2 picks. Like, he set the standard for how a lot of quarterbacks play now. So you throw him into this time, I think that is a high-flying offense. You got to remember with Miami, yes, he didn't win a Super Bowl, John. They didn't have anything around him. I mean, name me one offensive player he played with. Yeah, I mean, defenses were pretty weak at the same time as well. His defenses were. So he never really had a great team around him. I think if you surrounded him with talent, he could have won 4 or 5 Super Bowls.
Yeah. Doug Lowry.
Oh, man, I'm going back and forth between a few here. I might say Terry Bradshaw.
What?
It sounds bizarre, but I mean,
yes, it does sound bizarre.
Here's my criteria. The dude won a lot of Super Bowls. I mean, he just, if you're looking for a pedigree of winning, I'm almost taking the opposite answer of John, the unsexy stats, but the Super Bowl production.
But he had some of the best defenses around him. I mean, it takes 22 guys to play a football game, at least.
Absolutely. I would take Bradshaw. I think he's kooky.
Oh.
I think he's a gunslinger. That's who I'm taking for my Bears.
He would have years where he threw more picks than touchdowns regularly.
So did Brett Favre. He was still successful.
No, he really didn't. He had like 1 year like that.
I'm choosing Terry Bradshaw, and I'm sticking with
What
it.
a horrible choice.
No Joe Montana, no Steve Young.
Yeah, I mean, choose Montana over Bradshaw.
No John Elway. Oh wow.
Nope, I'm sticking with Terry Bradshaw. That's my pick.
You didn't defend it very well.
I didn't have a lot of time.
Why is he better than Montana?
I'm gonna stick with multiple championships.
Whatever.
Good leader. Never in his career did he have a quarterback coach or an offensive coordinator. It was all just Chuck Noll being the head coach. So I mean, he had some leadership on that offense. I mean, it's an interesting pick, but I'm gonna stick with it for the success factor.
Way to pick like the 14th best quarterback of all time. Killing it.
Oh, and this is why it's always great when these two get to, I guess, square off against each other in sports talk. Next question that we move on to, kind of going, I guess, a little bit more recently here. within the last couple of years, and I know you guys have talked about this extensively at times on your show that you had on KRNU in years past. Has the NFL been right or wrong in how it's handled major player issues in the past? For example, Ray Rice, Adrian Peterson, Greg Hardy, and of course, Doug's personal favorite, and we'll start with Doug on this one, Aldon Smith.
Unpopular opinion, I think in 80% of the cases, they acted properly according to, and this is kind of a cop-out, they acted properly according to the CBA and the rules signed into the CBA. Do I think at times they could have done more? Sure. But do I, in the long run, do I look back on it and ever say the guy didn't get punished enough? Not really. It's been an interesting couple of years here with Aldon Smith, Ray Rice, Greg Hardy. You can keep going down the list and naming guys. But Ray McDonald. It's been an interesting year, and usually I think guys have gotten punished through the NFL as thoroughly and as extensively as really they can be.
Okay, so I'm just going to tell everybody, Doug is playing the ultimate hipster card this entire podcast so far. He doesn't go with a college basketball blue blood. He chose Terry Bradshaw as the quarterback that would lead the Bears to the Super Bowl. And he thinks the NFL acted properly in these cases. What? Doug, this is about PR. They have had the worst... in terms of doing things properly, waiting to gauge a public opinion and using brash reactions is not good. I mean, yes, according to the CBA, according to the CBA, Goodell could do a lot of things, but that doesn't actually mean he's acting properly. You're not acting properly with the Ray Rice situation when you suspend him for 2 games. The public throws a fit, and so you throw in more because there was a videotape released all of a sudden. That was bad PR, and that's not acting properly. I mean, in terms of the Greg Hardy thing, I'm fine with what he got in 4 games. But, the list goes on and on. I didn't like the way he handled Hardy last year with the whole random list he had all of a sudden that Peterson was on top of as well. The Josh Gordon thing has been handled odd. Case after case just shows, Deflategate is the number one answer in all of this. Yeah, technically the NFL had the rights to go after this Tom Brady thing, but the act that this is still a thing, that this is going to be sought out in court a year after it happens, is horribly. And to define Ryan's question, acting properly, how do you say that's acting properly?
Well, Ryan, is the question, did they act with enough? Did they act enough, or did they act properly?
Well, the question more is has the NFL been right? Were they right in how they handled these cases, or were they wrong?
Okay, from a punishment given out standpoint, besides Ray Rice, which me and John were on top of from the start, they've handled everything with the amount of punishment they've doled out properly. The way they've handled it with PR, I can't disagree with John on this. I mean, it's been a nightmare. They're constantly stepping on their own toes.
You can't even say they act with the punishment rate. Oh, you said except for Ray Rice.
Except for Ray Rice.
Sorry.
Everything else, the punishment has fit the crime more or less. But with Ray Rice, it obviously, there was they went back and, almost double jeopardy. Like, you can't get him for the same thing twice like that. But
I don't know if they had much jurisdiction to do what they did to Tom Brady.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's things.
Because I don't want this to turn into a Deflategate segment, but I mean that was handled pretty oddly, and still is being handled oddly. But keep going.
I'm just from the amount of punishment that was doled out perspective, totally fine by me. From how they handled it PR wise, they've looked like fools more times than not, which is tough to do when you're one of the most successful sports leagues in the world.
Sure.
It's hard to be as inept at public relations as the NFL has seemed to be. It almost is impressive how bad they've been.
Ryan. That's good. Oh, good stuff. Continuing on, and I guess this kind of stays with the NFL. We'll start with you, Kipper. What are your views on daily fantasy sports? That's a current ongoing issue right now with the NFL, and whether or not it's legal. There's already been a district attorney in New York who has told the Boston-based companies, DraftKings and FanDuel, that they are illegal and that they need to rescind what they basically have out there. What do you think?
Well, I have a number of thoughts on this. First of all, you're kind of
Jon, let's start with something real quick. In your eyes, because this is where it all breaks down.
It's a multi-layered issue, but yeah, go.
But this is what we need to figure out. Is it gambling in your eyes?
Yeah, but I consider a lot of things gambling, and it's not necessarily like I'm for gambling pretty much being legal. But I'm with you. In my opinion, absolutely. I mean, like if you consider this gambling, then clearly sportsbook is gambling. I mean, these are essentially the same things. You're betting on a certain people to do certain things. You're betting on the Packers to cover the spread. You're betting on Jay Cutler to throw for 250 yards or more. Like, I mean, regardless, yes, it takes some amount of skill to know these things, but at the end of the day, you can be the smartest NFL expert in the world. You don't know what's going to happen. That's kind of the beauty of sports in a way. And so, yes, it's gambling, but I also think it should be allowed. And my thing with this, too, is it's almost like the lottery in the sense that you're kind of an idiot if you do it. Like, what was it? Only 2% get like 98% of the money or something like that. I mean, I
think it's like 1.7% get 98%.
Yeah, it's ridiculously low. Like I did it once in the baseball season, and I like took time, probably an hour and a half. I worked on my team. I got slaughtered. Like there's just like algorithms that people do to consistently do all these things. You're stupid if you do it, but do I think people should have the right to be able to do something like that? Absolutely. The state, it turns into a larger issue, but the states, like, for example, New York, are silly going after it because right now they don't get a piece of the pie. And if you're going to have gambling in the state of New York, they want their hand in it. The Attorney General letter was very odd, and he said something to the degree of, he wondered if it was gambling like poker. He said pretty much it is. And he said something to the degree, I'm kind of blanking on it right now, that it hurts children, it hurts people, but it's just because the state also has a lottery too that I found that odd. But all in all, I'm kind of rambling at this point. But all in all, like I think it's fine, but I do consider it gambling. I wish we just could figure this all out because if poker is legal online, you should be able to bet on sports too. Because I think that is a certain level amount of talent. But Doug, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Ryan, the question is, should it exist, or what was the prompted question you gave us?
Just kind of like, what are your views on daily fantasy sports?
I wish they would stop advertising for every sporting event.
Yeah,
that's certainly my first view, and every radio segment in the past couple months. I'm with Jon. You're just kind of a. There's a really funny quote from Colin Cowherd he wrote in his first book, and it's, nothing makes a smart man dumber than women in sports. And I think this is one of those cases where every guy thinks he has the answer. And 99 or 98.3% of them don't, but they continue to go back and put money into this system. And obviously, people like it. It makes millions of dollars. Like, people enjoy doing it. There's no gun to their head saying they have to. I mean, they're choosing to out of their own free will. Mm-hmm. I guess that's also that's an aspect of gambling. If you go to a casino, no one's forcing you in there. But there's a lot of aspects with it that are, yes, you do kind of have to have skill. Even if you are creating an algorithm, that's a skill in itself.
Oh, absolutely.
That you can kind of cheat the system. There's a lot of issues with it, and I'm not a law expert by any means, but I think it should be legal? Probably. I mean, it's not really hurting anyone. People have been allowed to go on to Yahoo or ESPN or wherever and hold their own fantasy leagues, and everyone just throws $30 in a pot at the office or whatever. I mean, so it's, there's been gambling in fantasy sports forever. So besides that, I don't know. There's just a lot of suckers out there and who think they know better than everyone else. And I don't think people understand how the system actually works and how if you all choose, if 90 or 98.3 of you choose Rob Gronkowski, none of those people are going to win if he does well. You have to choose the guy that's not the one the other person's choosing. There's a lot of aspects to it, but there's a lot of suckers out there that'll just kind of do it no matter what.
Certainly.
Interesting thoughts from Doug Lowery, Jon Kipper here as we continue on with our debate between the two gentlemen here on the Route. Podcast special, as I should say, is what I'm looking to say here. Next question, current news in college football. The playoff, people after the first year, still those people are arguing for, an expansion to an 8-team playoff and nothing further than that. That I guess I really don't need to ask what Doug Lowery's thoughts are on that. Doug, I guess we'll start with you. 4 teams or 8?
4 teams. It's got to be exclusive. You start including everyone, it doesn't make sense. Yes. Then it becomes more of a playoff, just true playoff system where, there's levels of the playoffs. Now it's like a play-in game, like the 1 faces 4 and 2 faces 3. I like the system the way it is now. It's got exclusivity. It's got tough decisions still at the end of the year. Yes, teams will be left out, but it's a championship for the winners. And they put together a panel of the smartest college football minds they could find. And there's got to stay a realm of exclusivity in it. It's not an inclusive thing to play for a championship. Not everyone gets a seat at the table. Your regular season resume gets you into the conversation. A panel chooses you out of maybe 6 or 7 teams, and usually the top 4 or 5 is pretty dang clear. There's a realm of exclusivity that needs to be kept around because 4 teams is plenty. It used to be 2 forever that just got to play. 4 teams is fine. Do not add any more. There no more. You don't need 8. You just don't. It makes it way too inclusive. There's not 8 teams that deserve to all play for the championship. I don't think, in my eyes. I mean, you say there's 4, I'm fine with that. You say there's 8, I have questions.
Jon Kipper.
Yeah, me and Doug are on the same page on this one. Can we just take a deep breath and actually evaluate this thing from afar for a few years? It's year 2.
Perfectly. Honestly, it worked perfectly.
I think TCU and Baylor fans can argue that it didn't work perfectly last year. But that's not the point. The point is, there's always going to be somebody on the outside looking in. Every year, some years it works out that only 2 would have made it. Some years it works out that only 3 could have made it. Some years there'll be 5. Last year was 6, where 6 teams are legitimate in argument. Every year is going to be different. If you go to an 8 team, there's going to be 9 teams that are, vying for that 8 spot, those 8 spots, or 11. Why are we in such a hurry to go to 8? I think at some point it's going to, because that's how these things naturally go. But it's year 2.
John, think about it, though. If you're thinking the decision-making process of the NCAA, the NFL, any league, right?
Yeah.
Any time that they can say, all right, we'll make like $8 billion more doing this,
right,
and it's going to come at relatively low cost, besides, of course, if you want to really get into the argument of like the slave labor of student athletes, really want to get into that. Yes, I know they're playing and they get an education. I'm fine with that. But, it only comes at their detriment. There's no bad side to a coach having to coach another week. The administrator, the high-up people at the NCAA don't give a darn, and they're the ones who make the choice. So, eventually it's going to happen because there's money, obviously. But it doesn't need to. It's fine the way it is.
And, you mentioned exclusivity. College football is great. One reason is it's different like that. In the NFL, by the end of the year, 12 teams have a chance to win it? MLB, you have 10 teams that have a chance to win it. NBA, you have more than half the league that has a chance to win it. College football, it used to be just 2. Now it's 4. Can we just chill with this? It makes, yes. And I do think, yes, the regular season is going to be exciting, whether there is solely just one national championship game, whether there's a 4-team playoff, whether there's an 8-team playoff. Yes, college football is always going to be great. But yeah, we just don't need to go to 8 yet. We can just take a step back and realize, 4 works out fine. Let's enjoy that for a while. But I do think the money and just people are already calling for it. People are saying, well, it won't hurt the regular season. Like I said, they have a point to an extent. But it also makes these playoff games really, really fun when there's only 2 of them to enter the national title. So, yes, me and Doug, or otherwise known as What?
One last thing is, if you think about it, even last year, and I know any given Saturday, whatever you want to say, but like, was any team going to beat Ohio State the way they were rolling? I mean, yes, I get it. Any team on any given day. But Oregon, who had just whooped Florida State, who probably didn't deserve to be there as much as maybe TCU or Baylor. I mean, a perfect record got them there, but they were a lot closer in a lot of games in a very weak conference than Oregon was. There, not Oregon, TCU or Baylor were blowing teams out I would say the Big 12 last year was stronger than the ACC. But, name a team last year that got left out that would have been so clear of a choice. There's not one that, it's not a clear choice that they totally got hosed. It's a subjective decision, but I think it was the right one.
I agree.
Moving on to a little bit more closer to home for all of us here in Lincoln, Nebraska, or in Nebraska general. This has been something that Brent Bonfuller and I have talked about on this podcast multiple times, along with Devin Cleach as well. And I'll ask you two guys this, because of course you both are very knowledgeable, and Doug, you kind of from an outsider's perspective per se with this question. And the question is, do Nebraska fans have too high of expectations for their football program, and do they understand the difficulty of playing college football and recruiting in college football in this current time frame, aka 2015 and moving forward? And Kipper, I know that's kind of a loaded question, so I'll start with you.
I know where I'm going with this.
John, you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
I would love to go first.
We'll have Kipper go first.
No, they don't have too high of standards, to answer your question. This was, my opinion, the main reason why Bo Pelini should have and maybe was let go. Was once you decide that your standards maybe are 8-9 wins, then that becomes, in fact, the standard. If you as a fan base continually keep your sights high, you continually set your expectations for 10, 11, 12 wins, championships, then that significantly helps. And that helps the mindset, and mindset is huge in college football. Obviously, you need the right coach to get there. Nebraska hasn't had that since 97. Well, I guess one they got to some extent pretty far. But no, I don't think the standards are too high. I think, what is the benefit of lowering your standards? Does it make you feel a little bit better? No, I think they're fine the way they are.
Well, John, let me stop you for a second. Ryan, are you asking, are the standards kept by the fans too high, or is their reaction to not being good for a year too unrealistic? Because I feel like everyone is okay with having high standards. That's not an issue. I mean, like, wanting to be good isn't a bad thing, but looking, and here is going to be my point, John. And I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, you're fine. Go.
I think we're arguing, different things here if that's the case, because the standards. I mean, everyone wants to win. I mean, Duke football fans want to win every year. And they deal with being bad a little bit more than formerly power programs, but everyone thinks they're the best at the start of the year. You point a camera at any student section, they're saying we're number one. I mean, that's just kind of no one's saying we're number 7. It's just not how it works. Everyone wants to be good. I think the issue Ryan brings up is the reaction to not being excellent every year, and I think the reality is you're not going to be good every year. I mean, there's just going to be down years, and I think you look at a year like the 2015-2016 season for the Huskers, I just don't think people understand how much of a perfect storm of crap happened to this team for it to end up the way it has. You talk about injuries just throughout the year, and whether that is because they've started a different training program and their bodies are moving from one strength coordinator to another, it's program. It could be that. It could be guys are just injury prone on this team. It could be one of a million things. Then you look at the fact that they have an entire culture shift. I mean, it's not a giant deal, but you go from a Bo Pelini-led team to a Mike Riley-led team. Even the assistant coaches have that different demeanor. It's just going to be different. You look at a different offense entirely. I mean, we're talking entirely. This team was going to have to learn to play a different offense and a different defense that are completely different to what they've played before, and you have to unlearn things to learn new things. I did a little quick research while we were getting all this set up, and I looked into it. Iowa right now to all of our behests, is having a good season. But if you look at their recruiting numbers, they were 12th last year, 12th the year before, 12th in the Big Ten, 12th in the Big Ten, 7th in the Big Ten, 4th in the Big Ten, which means their senior class right now was the 4th best class in the Big Ten when they signed in 2011. What does that tell you? That you need one good class and then some mediocre ones to fill it all out, and to have some good coaching and some good player progression along the way. But it doesn't take being Alabama to be good in this time. So the idea that we're not in a good place to recruit, or that you need the top recruits, is wrong. But I think you need a system in place, and I think people need to not lay off Riley, but to give him a year or two to at least put things in place, because he came in and he's working fast and furious right now. He's doing the best he can to get the guys he thinks he needs in here. It's just, there's a lot of aspects to this, but to say that you have to be good every year or the coach needs to go, you got to give people more time, and that's just an overreaction in today's football fan society, is to say, "I'll burn it all down, but start over." It's not the way to go. And John, I'm gonna give it to you now, but I think this is more of the argument that needs to be made.
I think the only problem I have with that is this. A lot of the really ardent Mike Riley supporters keep saying that it takes a while to get your system going, that these players are all adjusting to new stuff. But we knew that going into this season. Yet I didn't see a lot of people predicting 5-7, 6 type years. So they are underperforming even those people's expectations, in my opinion. And it just kind of sounds to me like that's an excuse for. Like I think Nebraska fans, with the resources they had, with the talent, I think they can be legitimately mad a little bit that this team might not even qualify for a bowl.
Resources can't stop Vincent Valentine from missing 4 games.
Every team deals with injuries. Every team deals with injuries.
I feel it, but it's just one of those years. I can't remember a year in my. I went to UNL for 6 years and followed the team vehemently, just with serious gusto. I can't remember a season where they were that banged up, like that, to that level of starters. Like, especially when you consider
those years we lost Martinez and stuff. Their quarterback, we had Armstrong pretty much every game but one. I mean,
it's just, I think there's a perfect storm of kind of crap. Like I said, there's just the linebacker depth.
We knew that before the season. We knew that before the season.
What are you going to do to make more linebacker depth if the previous coaching staff didn't find enough?
My point is, why weren't people saying this in August? People in August were still thinking we might be 8, 9, 10 win team, and then they're falling apart, and they go, well, actually, the linebacker depth's bad. That's why.
Well, is that people's problem? Is that the public?
I'm just saying, I find a lot of the same people that are making these excuses are a lot of the same people that thought Nebraska was going to be pretty good this year.
John, I thought from the start that they weren't going to be very good this year.
You were predicting this type of year. You were thinking this type of year.
I wouldn't have guessed a loss to Purdue, but I was thinking at least 4 or 5 losses.
All right, whatever. I'm just saying, a lot of people that are making these excuses, man, are a lot of people that had pretty high expectations, and now they're just trying to form other thoughts why this might have happened.
Who are a lot of people in your eyes? Are you talking
people that I have talked to? Like I don't know, like 7, Doug. I'm just saying, like, people that I have talked to that are making these arguments that I hear on the radio are the same people that thought we'd have a pretty smooth transition to Riley. I get it. I'm generalizing. But, I'm not even necessarily targeting you. I'm just saying as a general point, like, we are trying to make a lot of excuses for a team that we got to remember won 9 games last year and had a lot of talent coming back. And has a schedule that might be tough, but it's not arduous, that it's just ridiculous.
No, it wasn't bad at all.
No. And so, I think the fact, I think Husker fans, my only point with this, I think Husker fans have some legitimate reason to be a little upset if the Nebraska team loses to Iowa and finishes 5-7 on the year. And Nebraska very easily could be 4-8 if that Michigan State game goes differently. And I get it, once you start playing that game, you could say Nebraska should have won some games. But still, like...
Right. Well, and I would say the one thing that I enjoy that I've seen is consistent progress throughout the season. There hasn't been a big regression. I know Purdue kind of was, but the team wasn't. It's never been, fully put together. They're still learning different things. They're still coming into their own as a team right now. And it's been mostly, for the grand majority of it, progression throughout the season of getting better. So besides the hiccup of Armstrong being hurt, I think it was mostly, a progression in the season from the team and their ability.
That's fair.
Fair enough. Moving on, we got, looks like just 2 more questions left to go here. Jon Kipper, Doug Lowery joining me, Ryan Swanigan here on a podcast special here on The Route. Our second to last question, who's the biggest surprise in the NFL in terms of teams?
Biggest surprise in terms of teams. Doug, do you have one on top of your head?
Oh, this is not even a question in my eyes.
Okay.
It's got to be the Bengals. I mean, they have lost the game, but they went perfect 8-0. Like, I just did not see that coming. They're not the team that, they seemed so far away last year in so many different areas, and they don't have a super different team this year roster-wise. I mean, it's not vastly different this year than it was last year. It's just a team that kind of came out of nowhere for me, and Andy Dalton stepped up and playing just like a man possessed. I know that's getting more into a specific player, but, the Bengals as a whole and Andy Dalton's play, just never saw any of that coming. It completely shocked me. I know on paper that they're not a terrible team, and Marvin Lewis is a pretty solid coach, but I just did not see them rolling out to 8-0.
Doug, I mean, I'll answer the question soon, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on Dalton saying that Watt's comments were bad for the kids.
Oh, what a baby.
I know. I thought that was ridiculous. Anyway,
what a weenie. That's the kid that gets picked on and goes to the principal and tells them.
And every defensive player now is just going to talk mad crap to him because he complained. That was like 4th grade trash talk Watt put on him, and he complained to the media about it.
John, in your eyes, what's worse, that or the outrage over Cam Newton?
Oh God, Bo! I was more taken aback by the Dalton thing, but the thing around Cam Newton dancing is laughable. But people are always going to get mad for touchdown dances. There's always those weird people out there. But oh yeah, the Dalton thing, yikes. Anyway, back to Ryan's question. I think there's a few teams you could go there. I don't know if there's a wrong answer here. I'm going to say Carolina on the basis of this offense. Like, we knew the defense was there. We knew that Luke Kuechly was pretty good. We knew Josh Norman was a young up-and-comer. We knew there were some studs on the defensive line like K'Wan Short. But holy cow, Cam Newton has taken a huge step this year. Mind you, with his number 1 receiver being Ted Ginn Jr., Jericho Cotchery, these guys that got cut off other teams, and they're the leading Carolina's wide receiver core. The run game has looked good under Jonathan Stewart this year. It hasn't been awesome, but it's been good. But Cam has just found ways to tear up the scoreboard throughout the year without a lot of weapons. That offensive line is solid, but it's not fantastic. Cam Newton, I mean, right now, easily, I think, the MVP. Now, obviously, there's 6 more games to go, 6 more games. But I mean, right now, he has a gigantic case to be made for that. Because, I mean, and this was a team that could have made the playoffs last year. They were fighting in that crappy division against Atlanta for most of the year. But if I had to say a number 2 team, by the way, Tampa Bay, sticking in that same division, Winston looks to be legit. He looks to be a leader. He has all the tools. Like, he just looks like an NFL player out there. He looks like a quarterback, very confident guy. I don't think the Bucs are going to make the playoffs this year, although they have a chance still. But I think they surround him with a little bit of a defense, and that Bucs team might be good for a while.
Johnny, do you believe in the Ditka curse of the sweater?
No, shut up. No, I think that's a stupid. I didn't even really get into it. Even like when I saw it, I just think, yeah, you got paid a buttload of money to wear a Packard shirt.
I mean, he took it off today in a commercial. He put the Bears one back on, and they won.
Yes, I'm sure the Packers' fortunes ride on that man.
On Mike Ditka.
On Mike Ditka.
Oh,
I don't get into stuff like that very much.
I will just go back and say the Panthers were my obvious second choice.
Yeah.
Between the two, Cam Newton's just unreal. I mean, the way that he and Dalton have both stepped up and have been playing this year, I just did not see coming. I figured Dalton was just going to continue to be his lackluster self, throwing picks every time, every time in crunch situations. But with the Bengals, it's going to take more than one win in the playoffs for me to believe anything, or a win in the playoffs, I should say. So.
I feel you, brother.
2 more questions, actually. I just now thought of one, I guess, to kind of surprise both of you. and mainly because this is kind of the only sport that we've left out that I know we can all talk about thoroughly here, and that's the NBA. And the question is will LeBron James ever be able to win an NBA title in Cleveland?
I think there's a very good case to be made, yes. You throw in the, I mean, he's got pretty good pieces around him, and he can continuously get that. People want to play with LeBron James. So say Kevin Love doesn't work out, another stud's going there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little worried about LeBron's longevity because, remember, that guy has played in a lot of games since he was 18 years old. 100 games a year counting playoffs on average, probably. It's a lot of mileage. He takes very good care of himself with help, which helps a lot. But I don't know how long they have. But I think you throw in the fact that the Eastern Conference, there's not a lot there. Chicago's kind of around. Washington might have a chance in the near future. Maybe a few other teams. But that Eastern Conference is not very good. So he can put that team in the spot a lot. If you're in the Western Conference, like the Clippers have a lot of studs. They might never win they might never even get to the finals because the Warriors, the Spurs, the Rockets, the Mavericks, the Grizzlies, all those guys are kind of just going after that first spot. Very, very hard to get into the finals. And so, I mean, I would say the Cavs will at some point win because I think LeBron at least has one more run in him.
Doug Lowery?
Yeah, I mean, this is gonna be kind of opposite. You know, not really a on the court aspect, but you just think about it like LeBron James is so, like people want to play with him so bad they're staying or moving to Cleveland,
Yes.
Ohio. Like,
why didn't this happen before he moved? I don't understand why this didn't happen before he moved to Miami. Like why did all of a sudden?
I mean? Like Tristan Thompson gave up basically his choice of where he wanted to play, including any coast and the ability to play, you know, in warm weather, and he's going to be in Cleveland throughout the winter so that he can stay with LeBron James. Ray Allen left Miami to go to Cleveland to play with LeBron James. Like, there's just no, never mind. He didn't. James Jones did though.
Yes.
There's just aspects to this, like Kyrie Irving staying, Kevin Love foregoing the Lakers and getting to live in L.A. to move to Cleveland, Ohio. I don't know if either of you have been to Cleveland.
I have been there.
It's not the place you want to be. It's not great.
Sorry, go.
Go ahead.
I mostly agree with you. I will say, though, these guys, during the NBA season, they're moving around so much, it doesn't matter a ton where you're at. Although Cleveland in the winter, you could be in L.A. for half the time, so I would agree. And these guys live in L.A., Florida during the offseason. But, you know, I mostly agree. It does show that the power of LeBron, that you can get guys that actually want to go play in Cleveland. You don't get that very often. It's not like a Chicago either, like a cold weather city that's a cool sports town. Cleveland is a tortured sports town that doesn't have a great nightlife, and it's just Cleveland. It's cold. It's Ohio.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, that's just it. Though. It's like they don't go to play in Cleveland; they go to play with LeBron James.
Yes.
You know, like it's not. You know, they're not choosing to play in Cleveland; they're choosing to play with LeBron James. They just so happen half of their games happen in Cleveland.
Moving on to our final question here. Doug Lowery, Jon Kipper joining me. Ryan Swanigan here. Special podcast edition, or a special podcast special. I can never get that right. Podcast special here of The Route. Favorite thing that you've learned in sports this year? And Doug Lowery, we will start with you, sir.
I did not know this existed. And I was sitting at a bar in South Sioux City, Nebraska, with my brother who had come. He works for Upper Iowa, and I work through some folks that broadcast Wayne State games. And so he was coming to town, and he traveled with the team, and he was staying in South Sioux City. So I drove up there to spend some time with him. We went out to a bar. We were just watching football, having a brew, eating dinner, whatever it was. And we were watching Temple. And I didn't know this about Temple football. But the single-digit numbers, they only give out 9 of them. So there's, only 9 for both sides of the ball, and you have to be voted on by your peers on the team to be one of the 9 toughest guys on the team to be allowed to wear one of the numbers 1 through 9. And I think that's one of the coolest traditions ever. I don't know how long this has been going on. I don't know if it's that head coach's thing, But I never known that before. I don't know if that's like a well-known thing. If Johnny's going to get on me now for not knowing that, but I just think that I learned that earlier this year, and I've really enjoyed watching Temple ever since because they have a toughness to their team that I really respect and enjoy. I don't know. I thought that was really, really fascinating.
Well, mine's not a cool name. I didn't know that. That isn't. Going into that a little bit. I mean, I don't know. My favorite thing would be kind of maybe the power of Husker fans, that how bad Nebraska can be, and they still like. I mean, you go to this Iowa game on Friday, it's going to be just as nuts of an atmosphere as if it was a big game for Nebraska as well.
As if it was Nebraska,
and so
Ohio State.
You continuously learn how passionate these people are, and they might not be the loudest stadium, but God, they go for everything. And to some extent, like I said, you know that, but this just reaffirms it every year. And I don't think there's really much issue of that sellout streak ever really breaking. But I think an important thing, too, is to really try and have perspective on a lot of these cases when we talk about Greg Hardy and later on with Ray Rice, or earlier on with Ray Rice and Deflategate. Don't believe everything you hear right off the bat. You think Deflategate, how that story got really skewed early on by false reports. With Greg Hardy, just because the media is all on top of somebody, you got to look at the larger issue. And this year in sports kind of has just continuously thrown out that in different ways. That you got to really take a step back and maybe not just try to join the crowd and everything, piling on Tom Brady, piling on Greg Hardy, when a lot of times the facts, the actually right answer is somewhere in the middle.
That's a very, very interesting point. Interestingly enough, that we kind of talked about on our podcast today, having seeing the bigger picture and making sure that somebody else that's on the same page with you sees it bigger than you do, and how important that is, especially when it comes to sports, because sometimes there's a lot more to the story than there actually is, because some media outlets, to be honest, they have agendas, or they like to run with drama, and that's really what ends up happening sometimes, is the drama side of it, and then the truth really gets skewed when it comes to those things. Doug Lowery, Jon Kipper, it's always a pleasure for you guys.
Ryan,
yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Can I extend this a little bit real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Johnny, you were at the Michigan State game as a fan, correct?
Yes.
Was it the best atmosphere, full game atmosphere you've ever been to there?
No.
What wins that for you?
Full game atmosphere, I think Oklahoma 09. That was a consistent.
That is still, that. So I think we've talked about this. 09 Oklahoma was unreal.
Yes.
And then I think if we're talking basketball, Wisconsin at the end of the year, 2 seasons ago. Those are the two loudest and full game experience I've ever been to. And that's, again, the power of Husker fans.
08 Colorado, the Alex Henry kick.
Was that full game atmosphere or single moment?
I mean, there were several moments in that game. And coming back,
there were a series of events.
Yeah, I mean, full game atmosphere. I mean, it was a pretty important game still. So I mean, maybe not as hype. I thought that was a better full game atmosphere though. I don't know. The fact that Nebraska isn't very good this year, I think, hurts the Michigan State game a little bit. I also think Nebraska lost this one, but Texas in the snow, I believe that was in 05, 06, one of those 2 years. That was one of the most fun games I've ever been at, even though Nebraska lost. That was a famous Terrence Dunn fumble game. But yeah, I think those three were better. But other than that, then the Michigan State game is next.
All right, John, I got one more for you.
All right, what's up?
What are your thoughts on the Bears this season? Lay it on the honest.
It wouldn't be proper without a Bears versus Packers debate between Jon Kipper and Doug Lowery.
I think people really were writing them off early in the year, and I think one thing, guys, the amount of visceral people have for Jay Cutler is ridiculous, and it almost kind of makes me like him because people were talking about the guy like he's as bad as Blaine Gabbert at times. And people got to forget that he's better than more than half the quarterbacks in the NFL by quite a large margin. And so they have that. They have the whole Alshon Jeffrey thing. They have weapons. And I think Adam Gates has been really good. Clearly the team still has problems. You look at the defensive woes. A lot of times they struggle there. They still have some offensive line problems, things of that nature. But no, they haven't been bad. Like I remember at the beginning of the year, people were telling me how bad the Bears were. I was like, well, To me, they seem like kind of like an 8-8 team. They seem like a team that might be able to make a run a little bit. At least Cutler seems to have found an OC that he works well with. But a little bit better than I expected. But yeah, go.
That's the issue. Is I'm afraid Jason's going to get poached now.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you can work with Cutler, you're going to make a dime in this league.
Yeah, you got to root for a lot of not a lot of firings, essentially.
Yeah, I'm definitely on that bandwagon.
Absolutely.
Doug Lowery, always a pleasure, my friend. And, of course, same to you, Jon Kipper. These two, probably one of the best sports talk personalities, maybe even in the history of KRNU. And, of course, Jon Kipper is going to be graduating about less than a month now.
That's the plan, Ryan.
When you're going to be walking down the aisle, and Doug Lowery, you're going to be probably walking through the snow up there in northeast Nebraska.
Yeah, I'm going to continue to go through this whole process of earning my street cred before I move back over to the sports talk realm.
There you go. Good work, my friend. Doug Lowery, always a pleasure, my friend.
You guys be good.
Absolutely. And Jon Kipper, always a pleasure to have you on as well. It's always good stuff.
Heck yeah, buddy.
Thank you for tuning in to this special edition here, this podcast special here on The Route. Jon Kipper, Doug Lowery joining me, Ryan Swanigan, signing off for now, and we hope you enjoyed. We will see you next Sunday for our regular podcast and our final Husker football podcast. Potentially, we will see. It's not confirmed, but be sure to check this out and check out our other podcasts as well. Facebook.com/TheRoute2 at @the_Route2 on Twitter, and of course our website, theroute2.wordpress.com. We'll see you next week. .com. 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 We'll see you next